Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
We're grateful for each view and comment. Tell us, from which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Sand. Damon Sullivan had built everything in his life through meticulous calculation. The sprawling Lakewood estate, the thriving investment firm, even his marriage to Natalie. Each decision made with precision. Their wedding 15 years ago had been the society event of Boston, uniting old money with new ambition. At 42, Damon had the sharp features and confident bearing of a man who commanded respect in boardrooms and social circles alike. His marriage to Natalie had once seemed perfect. She was beautiful, intelligent, and came from a prestigious family. Her mother, Evelyn Pierce, had never approved of Damon despite his success. New money, she'd mutter when she thought he couldn't hear. Not bred for our world. Damon ignored the slights. Success was his revenge against those who thought themselves better by birth alone. His own childhood in a working-class neighborhood of Pittsburgh had taught him that resources were finite, loyalty rare, and betrayal commonplace. "You're working late again?" Natalie's voice carried a hint of accusation as she leaned against his home office doorway. At 38, she remained striking, auburn hair falling in perfect waves, emerald eyes calculating beneath perfectly sculpted brows. "The Hamilton merger won't close itself," Damon replied, without looking up from his laptop. "I thought you had that charity gala tonight." "Canceled. But that's convenient for you, isn't it?" A sarcastic smile played on her lips. Damon finally looked up. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." She waved dismissively. "I'll be at my mother's for dinner. Don't wait up." After she left, Damon stared at the wall, contemplating the growing distance between them. His phone buzzed. A text from his younger brother, Trevor. "We need to talk. It's about Natalie. Call me." Damon frowned. Trevor had always been protective, seeing danger where Damon saw opportunity. Still, Trevor's instincts were rarely wrong. He dialed his brother's number. "I debated whether to tell you this," Trevor said without preamble. "Natalie's been meeting with Victor Hargrove regularly." Victor Hargrove, Natalie's colleague at the architectural firm where she was a partner. Harvard-educated, from an established family. Exactly the type of man Evelyn Pierce would approve of for her daughter. "They work together," Damon replied evenly. "They have projects. Not at the Harborview Hotel, they don't," Trevor countered. "I saw them last week. They looked intimate." Something cold settled in Damon's stomach. "I appreciate the concern, but I need evidence before I make accusations. Natalie values her professional relationships." "Your call. Just watch your back." After hanging up, Damon sat motionless. He'd built his fortune by seeing patterns others missed. Now he reviewed the past 6 months. Natalie's late nights, new clothes, sudden interest in privacy, decreasing intimacy. The pattern was forming, but Damon wasn't one to act on suspicion alone. He needed facts. He opened his laptop and created a new folder labeled Contingency. If what he suspected was true, Damon wouldn't just defend himself. He would ensure that those who betrayed him would regret it for the rest of their lives. The next morning, Damon called in a favor from an old client who specialized in digital security. By afternoon, monitoring software had been discreetly installed on their home network. That evening, he suggested a weekend trip to their lake house. "I can't this weekend," Natalie said quickly. "The Westfield project proposal is due Monday." "With Victor?" Damon asked casually. A flicker of something, alarm, crossed her face before she composed herself. "Among others." "What?" "Just curious about your work. You rarely talk about it anymore." She smiled tightly. "Because you rarely seem interested." That night, lying beside his sleeping wife, Damon made his decision. He would discover the truth, and if his suspicions proved correct, his response would be devastating. Damon Sullivan didn't lose, especially not to those who thought themselves entitled to take what was his. Chapter 2. Shadows and Whispers. The first concrete evidence arrived 3 weeks later. Damon had been simultaneously building his case and observing Natalie's behavior with detached precision. The monitoring software had captured text messages between her and Victor. V. Miss you already. Last night was incredible. And patience. Our time is coming. D. Suspects nothing. Damon stared at the exchange, feeling strangely calm. The betrayal stung less than the calculation behind it. This wasn't just passion, this was planning. Further investigation revealed more troubling patterns. Natalie had been accessing their joint financial accounts, documenting balances, investment portfolios. She'd recently spoken with their attorney without mentioning it to Damon. It was during a business lunch with Preston Mills, a banking executive and longtime acquaintance, that Damon received unexpected insight. Your wife made quite an impression on the board, Preston mentioned casually over their entrees. Damon maintained his composed expression. Board, the Sullivan Family Foundation. She presented architectural plans for the new community center. With Victor Hargrove. Preston paused. I assumed you knew. The Sullivan Family Foundation was Damon's philanthropic project, his attempt to provide opportunities for underprivileged children like he once was. Natalie had never shown interest in it before. Of course, Damon smiled smoothly. Just curious about your impression. They were very synchronized, Preston replied carefully. Victor mentioned they've been working closely on several projects. His family has substantial connections in development. Later that day, Damon contacted his personal attorney, Samuel Westbrook, a ruthless legal mind he kept separate from the firm that handled his and Natalie's joint matters. I need options, Damon explained after outlining his suspicions. Discreetly, Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, Samuel reminded him. Without a bulletproof prenup, which you don't have, she could get up to half. I'm not concerned about money, Damon replied. I want to understand what they're planning. Samuel leaned forward. You need surveillance. Professional, legal surveillance. Damon hired 2 firms, one to monitor Natalie and Victor, another to investigate their electronic communications. He was building a case with the methodical precision that had made him successful in business. Meanwhile, he maintained a perfect facade at home. He brought Natalie flowers, suggested dinners, acted the devoted husband. If she noticed the change, she didn't comment, perhaps attributing it to guilt for his prior neglect. During a dinner party at their home, Damon watched Victor interact with Natalie. The architect was tall, aristocratic, with the easy confidence of generational wealth. Damon observed the subtle glances, the careful distance they maintained, the practiced indifference. Your husband's quite accomplished, Victor said to Natalie when Damon approached them, champagne in hand. The Sullivan investment strategy is legendary. Damon has always been good with money, Natalie replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Though some values can't be measured in dollars. Like architectural beauty, Victor added smoothly, or meaningful connections. The conversation dripped with subtext that Damon pretended not to notice. Victor's firm is doing remarkable work with sustainable design, he commented pleasantly. Perhaps we should consider them for the new office building. Victor's expression flickered with surprise before he recovered. I'd be honored to discuss it. Later that evening, after guests departed, Natalie approached Damon in his study. That was unexpected, offering Victor the building project. Damon smiled. He's talented, and you speak highly of him. She studied him carefully. You've been different lately, more attentive. Perhaps I'm realizing what's important. He reached for her hand, felt her momentary hesitation before she let him take it. That night, the surveillance team sent their first comprehensive report. Victor and Natalie had met 3 times that week at a private residence registered to a shell company. Financial traces showed the company linked back to Victor's family holdings. More disturbing was the discovery that Natalie had opened a separate account at Cayman National Bank, with transfers from their joint investment account disguised as charitable donations to organizations that didn't exist. As Damon reviewed the evidence, his phone buzzed with a text from Victor. Looking forward to discussing the building project. Natalie mentioned your anniversary dinner is next week. Perhaps we could meet after? Damon smiled coldly at the screen. Their anniversary dinner. The perfect setting for what he now planned. He texted back, perfect timing. In the darkness of his study, Damon continued assembling the pieces of his counterattack. The anniversary dinner wouldn't just mark 15 years of marriage. It would be the beginning of his calculated retribution. Chapter 3. The Gathering Storm. 15 years, Evelyn Pierce declared, raising her glass at the private dining room of Le Bernardin, one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants. Though I must say, it feels longer. The bar was thinly veiled as humor. Damon smiled politely at his mother-in-law, a woman whose disapproval had been as consistent as her designer wardrobe. Evelyn, at 65, retained a regal bearing and cutting tongue that had made her a formidable presence in Boston society. "Mother," Natalie admonished without conviction, her hand resting possessively on the gift box beside her plate, a framed photograph still wrapped in silver paper. The anniversary dinner had been Damon's suggestion, including inviting Evelyn. The restaurant's private room ensured both intimacy and discretion for what would unfold. Samuel Westbrook had arranged for his associate, Patricia Donovan, to be coincidentally dining at the restaurant, ready to enter when signaled. 15 years is significant, Damon agreed, raising his glass. A time for reflection on the past and clarity about the future. Natalie's smile faltered slightly before she recovered. To clarity, she echoed, a hint of challenge in her eyes. The appetizers arrived. Seared scallops for Natalie, foie gras for Evelyn, steak tartare for Damon. The conversation remained superficial, discussing mutual acquaintances and recent social events. Beneath the pleasantries, Damon noted Natalie checking her phone repeatedly. "Expecting a call?" he asked innocently. "Just monitoring a work situation," she replied smoothly. "The Westfield project has some complications." "With Victor?" Damon inquired, his tone casual. A flash of alarm crossed Natalie's face. "Among others. The whole team is involved." "How dedicated you are," Evelyn commented, her tone approving. "Victor Hargrove comes from excellent stock. His grandfather established half the important buildings in Boston." Speaking of Victor, Damon interjected, he sent his regards. "We're discussing the possibility of his firm designing our new corporate headquarters." Natalie's fork paused midway to her mouth. "You didn't mention that was moving forward. Some opportunities are too valuable to ignore." Damon smiled pleasantly. "But enough about work. I believe it's time for gifts." Natalie visibly relaxed, reaching for the silver-wrapped package beside her. "I had this specially made," she announced, pushing it toward Damon. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing a silver frame containing a professional photograph of Natalie and Victor standing before an architectural model. Both were smiling confidently at the camera. "This is from the Westfield presentation," Natalie explained. "I thought you'd appreciate seeing the professional side of my life. Victor has been instrumental in advancing my career." She smirked slightly. "He understands my ambitions. Some men just can't keep up with modern professional women," Evelyn added, her gaze fixed pointedly on Damon. "They're threatened by female success." Damon examined the photograph thoughtfully. The body language between Natalie and Victor told its own story. Standing closer than colleagues would, his hand positioned possessively at the small of her back. "It's revealing," Damon finally said, placing the frame carefully on the table. "Thank you for this insight into your priorities." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "Happy anniversary, Natalie. Open it." Natalie's expression softened with anticipation as she accepted the box. Jewelry had always been his standard gift, expensive, impersonal tokens that marked the passage of time. She opened it slowly, then froze. Inside was not jewelry, but a small USB drive. "What is this?" she asked, confusion replacing her expectant smile. "A modern gift for a modern woman," Damon replied evenly. "It contains printed screenshots of your text with Victor detailing your affair, your plans to drain my accounts before filing for divorce." The color drained from Natalie's face. Evelyn's gasp was audible in the suddenly silent room. "I don't know what you're talking about," Natalie attempted, her voice unsteady. "Don't you?" Damon removed a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the table. The Cayman account, the falsified charitable donations, the consultations with divorce attorneys. The property in Vermont purchased through Victor's shell company, intended, I believe, as your post-divorce residence. You've been spying on me? Natalie hissed, anger replacing shock. I've been protecting my interests, Damon corrected calmly, just as you've been advancing yours. At that moment, Patricia Donovan appeared at the entrance to the private dining room. Mr. Sullivan? Is this a good time? Perfect timing, Patricia, Damon replied, gesturing her inside. My wife and mother-in-law were just learning about some legal developments. This is absurd, Evelyn declared, reaching for her purse. Natalie, we're leaving. I wouldn't, Damon advised. Not if you want to avoid public embarrassment. The management is aware of the situation and has been instructed to prevent disruptions. Patricia placed a thick document on the table. The divorce petition, as you requested, Mr. Sullivan, along with the evidence packets for the civil suit against Mr. Hargrove for alienation of affection and the criminal complaints regarding the financial improprieties. Natalie stared at the documents, her composure crumbling. You can't prove anything. Can I? Damon activated his phone, and Victor's voice filled the room from a recorded conversation. Once the accounts are emptied and transferred, he'll have no liquidity to fight you in court. The prenup becomes unenforceable if we can prove emotional abandonment. Your mother's testimony will help establish that pattern. Evelyn's face had gone ashen. Natalie looked trapped, her calculated plan disintegrating before her eyes. You've been played, Natalie, Damon said quietly. While you thought I was oblivious, I was 10 steps ahead. That's the difference between us. You scheme, I strategize. The main course arrived, the server oblivious to the tension as he placed perfectly prepared dishes before them. Damon thanked him politely, then turned back to his wife. Now we have choices, he continued. You can sign my divorce agreement, which allows you to leave with your personal possessions and a modest settlement, or you can fight me and lose everything, including your freedom, given the nature of the financial fraud you've committed. You would send me to prison? Natalie whispered. Without hesitation, Damon confirmed, his voice devoid of emotion. The evidence has already been prepared for the district attorney. Patricia is merely waiting for my signal. Tears formed in Natalie's eyes. Whether from fear or rage was unclear. I loved you once, she said bitterly. Perhaps, Damon acknowledged. But love without loyalty is worthless to me. The storm had broken, but this was merely the beginning of Damon's calculated retribution. Victor Hargrove would soon discover that seducing Damon Sullivan's wife was the most catastrophic mistake of his privileged life. Chapter 4, Battlegrounds. Victor Hargrove had always believed his family name was armor enough against life's complications. The morning after Damon's anniversary revelation, that illusion shattered when he arrived at his firm's offices to find the entrance blocked by security guards. Mr. Hargrove, the lead guard approached. I'm afraid you've been temporarily barred from the premises pending an emergency board meeting. What? Victor's aristocratic features contorted with indignation. This is my family's firm. You can't keep me out. The board's orders, sir. Your access has been suspended. Victor's phone buzzed. A text from his father, Montgomery Hargrove. Emergency meeting called. Serious allegations. Come to the house immediately. The Hargrove estate in Beacon Hill had been the family for 5 generations. Montgomery, at 70, remained a powerful figure in Boston's business and social circles. When Victor arrived, he found his father in the study with 2 men he recognized as board members of Hargrove Architectural. What's happening? Victor demanded. Montgomery's expression was granite. Damon Sullivan has presented the board with evidence that you've been misappropriating client funds and diverting them to personal accounts. He's also filed a civil suit against you personally for alienation of affection. Victor paled. That's absurd. He can't prove. He has recordings. Victor, Montgomery interrupted sharply. Of you and Natalie discussing not only your affair, but detailed plans to divert funds from Sullivan's foundation projects. The board is calling for your resignation, added Harrison Pembroke, the senior board member, in return of all misappropriated funds. This is a setup, Victor insisted. Sullivan is manipulating you because of Natalie. Is Natalie manipulating the banking records too? Montgomery slid several documents across the desk. These transfers came from your authorization codes. Victor stared at the papers in disbelief. The transactions were indeed authorized with his credentials, moving funds from client accounts through a series of shells that eventually connected to the Vermont property and the Cayman account he'd helped Natalie establish. I didn't do this, he insisted, though doubt crept into his voice. Then explain it, Montgomery demanded. Because Sullivan's evidence is compelling enough that the board is considering cooperating with authorities to minimize the firm's liability. Victor's phone buzzed again, Natalie calling. He declined it, suddenly uncertain of everything. Sullivan's orchestrating this, Victor said finally. He's framing me because of Natalie. And what about Natalie? Montgomery asked coldly. Is he orchestrating your affair with a married woman as well? Victor had no answer. Across town, Damon sat in his office, monitoring the cascading consequences of his counteroperation. The first phase, separating Natalie and Victor from their support systems, was proceeding efficiently. Trevor entered with coffee. Natalie's been calling nonstop. Her access to the house has been revoked, her credit cards canceled, and her personal accounts frozen pending investigation. And Victor, Damon inquired, currently being excommunicated by his father and the Hargrove board. The financial evidence you planted is quite convincing. Damon nodded. How is the Sullivan Foundation board responding? They've called an emergency session for tomorrow. The evidence suggests Victor and Natalie were planning to divert funds from the community center project to their personal accounts. Excellent. Damon sipped his coffee. And the media? Trevor grimaced. That's where it gets messy. Financial Times is already sniffing around rumors of improprieties at Hargrove Architectural. Boston Globe Society reporter called asking about your separation. Feed the financial story, Damon instructed. Decline comment on personal matters. We want to focus on Victor's professional misconduct, not our marital issues. You don't think people will connect the dots? Of course they will. But officially, we maintain that the financial discoveries prompted the marital investigation, not vice versa. Trevor studied his brother. You've orchestrated this like a military campaign. When you hunt predators, you must think like one, Damon replied. Victor and Natalie believe themselves entitled to take what's mine. I'm simply ensuring they understand the cost of that miscalculation. The board meeting tomorrow will result in their removal from all foundation activities and a formal request for criminal investigation, Damon finished. The evidence suggests they plan to divert nearly $2 million intended for underprivileged children. Evidence you manufactured, Trevor noted without judgment. Evidence that tells a compelling story, Damon corrected. One consistent with their actual intentions toward me personally. His phone signaled an incoming call from an unknown number. Damon answered on speaker. Mr. Sullivan. Victor's voice was tightly controlled. We need to talk. Mr. Hargrove. Challenging day. You know exactly what you're doing, Victor hissed. This vendetta. This consequence, Damon interrupted smoothly. There's a distinction. My family name is precisely why you believed yourself untouchable, Damon finished. A miscalculation on your part. Silence stretched between them before Victor spoke again. What do you want? Want? Nothing. This isn't a negotiation, Victor. It's an education. By week's end, your reputation will be in tatters, your professional credentials under investigation, and your family's firm facing potential criminal liability. Your father will sacrifice you to save the Hargrove name. You're destroying lives over an affair, Victor said incredulously. No, Damon's voice hardened. I'm responding proportionally to a calculated attempt to destroy mine. You and Natalie plotted to take everything from me, my assets, my foundation, my reputation. Did you truly believe I would discover your betrayal and simply walk away wounded? This won't bring her back, Victor attempted. Damon laughed coldly. I don't want her back. I want justice, my version of it. Sleep well, Victor. He disconnected the call and turned to Trevor. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Ensure the evidence reaches the district attorney's office by noon. Trevor nodded solemnly. What about Evelyn? She's been making calls to her society friends, spinning the situation. Let her. Evelyn's influence depends on her daughter's marriage to me. As that crumbles, so will her standing. Damon checked his watch. The foundation board meets at 10. I want our security team escorting Natalie from the premises by 10:30. And if she doesn't show, she'll show, Damon said confidently. Natalie still believes she can salvage something from this situation. That misconception ends tomorrow. As night fell over Boston, 3 people lay awake in separate locations, each contemplating how thoroughly their lives had changed in 24 hours. For 2 of them, it was only beginning. Chapter 5. Calculated Moves. The Sullivan Foundation boardroom fell silent as Damon finished presenting the evidence against Natalie and Victor. 10 board members, Boston's elite business and philanthropic leaders, sat in stunned disbelief. These transfers, Dorothy Whitmore, the foundation's treasurer, pointed to the projected financial records. They were authorized using Ms. Sullivan's credentials? And Mr. Hargrove's, Damon confirmed. The audit trail shows they were accessing the system during off hours, gradually establishing the framework for larger diversions timed to coincide with the community center groundbreaking next month. Have you contacted authorities? Asked Benjamin Russo, a prominent banker. Not yet, Damon replied. I wanted the board's direction before proceeding. The double doors opened, and Natalie walked in, composed but pale. All heads turned. I apologize for my tardiness, she said smoothly, moving toward her usual seat. Traffic was. You weren't invited to this meeting, Natalie, Damon interrupted. The board is discussing your removal. Natalie froze, then straightened her shoulders. On what grounds? Dorothy Whitmore swiveled her laptop toward Natalie. These financial records suggest you and Victor Hargrove were preparing to divert foundation funds. We're considering whether to involve law enforcement. That's preposterous, Natalie scoffed, though her voice wavered. Damon is manipulating you because of our marital issues. These transactions occurred from your authorized devices, Benjamin pointed out. Unless you're suggesting someone stole your credentials? Natalie's gaze darted around the room, finding no allies. I demand time to review these allegations with my attorney. Of course, Damon agreed reasonably. The board will reconvene after you've had that opportunity. In the meantime, your foundation access is suspended, and security will escort you from the building. On cue, 2 security officers appeared at the doorway. The humiliation was calculated. Natalie forced to walk past her social peers under escort, her reputation in tatters. As she reached the door, Natalie turned back. This isn't over, Damon. On that, he replied evenly, we agree. After the board meeting adjourned with a unanimous vote to suspend Natalie and refer the matter to authorities, Damon returned to his office, where Samuel Westbrook awaited him. The district attorney has the preliminary evidence package, Samuel reported. They're reviewing it for potential charges. And the Hargrove situation? Imploding beautifully. The firm has announced Victor's leave of absence, pending an internal investigation. 3 major clients have already suspended projects. Damon nodded, satisfied. What's our vulnerability? Minimal. The evidence trail is compelling, but would require extensive forensic investigation to disprove. By then, the damage to their reputations will be irreversible. Samuel hesitated. However, there's a complication. Victor's father is calling in favors from Judge Holloway. Judge Martin Holloway had presided over business cases in Massachusetts for decades, with a reputation for protecting established interests. Expected, Damon acknowledged. That's why we've established multiple fronts. If the criminal charges encounter political resistance, the civil litigation and professional ethics complaints continue. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Sullivan, Evelyn Pierce is demanding to see you. Damon smiled thinly. Send her in. Evelyn swept into the office like a fury, designer handbag clutched like a weapon. You vindictive bastard. You're destroying my daughter's life. Your daughter destroyed her own life, Damon replied calmly. With your encouragement, if I recall your anniversary toast correctly. Samuel discreetly excused himself, closing the door behind him. Natalie made a mistake. Evelyn conceded, changing tactics. But this public humiliation serves no purpose except revenge. It serves justice, Damon corrected. And consequences. What will it take to end this? Evelyn demanded. Money? A quiet divorce. That opportunity existed yesterday. Today, the machinery is in motion. Evelyn's composure cracked. You came from nothing. My daughter gave you social legitimacy. Without the Pierce connection, you'd still be the scholarship boy pretending to belong. Damon's expression hardened. That scholarship boy built a fortune while your family squandered theirs. Natalie married me because your estates were mortgaged to the hilt and your investment portfolio was collapsing. How dare you? I dare because it's true, Damon interrupted. I paid off your debts as a wedding gift to Natalie. The Pierce reputation for wealth has been a facade for years, one I maintained out of respect for my wife. Evelyn paled. What are you saying? I'm saying your social standing depends entirely on my continued financial support that ends with Natalie's divorce. You can't. I already have. The trust that pays your expenses has been dissolved. The mortgage on your Beacon Hill home, which I hold, is now in default. You have 30 days to vacate. Evelyn collapsed into a chair, her aristocratic facade crumbling. You've planned this meticulously. I learned long ago to prepare for betrayal, Damon replied without emotion. It's a lesson your daughter and her lover are now learning as well. What do you want from me? Evelyn whispered. Nothing. Your collateral damage in Natalie's miscalculation. Damon checked his watch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with the district attorney in 30 minutes. After Evelyn left, Damon stood at his office window, overlooking Boston Harbor. Phase 2 was proceeding exactly as planned, isolating Natalie and Victor, undermining their professional standing, initiating legal consequences. Next came the systematic dismantling of their futures. His phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. Victor attempted to access his offshore accounts. Found them frozen. Damon smiled coldly. The net was tightening. Across town, Victor sat in his attorney's office, facing increasingly dire news. The board has voted to suspend you indefinitely, his lawyer explained. Your father abstained, but the vote was otherwise unanimous. They can't just erase me from my own family's firm, Victor protested. They can when the bylaws specifically allow for removal of any partner under criminal investigation. The lawyer slid a document across the desk. The DA's office has opened a formal inquiry into the foundation transfers. Sullivan is framing me. Perhaps, but he's doing it expertly. The lawyer looked troubled. The evidence trail is comprehensive. Your devices authorize the transfers. Your digital fingerprints are everywhere. Can you fight it? We could try, but I'm more concerned about the civil suit. Sullivan is claiming damages of $50 million for alienation of affection and business interference. Victor blanched. That's absurd. Perhaps, but it will take years to fight, during which your assets will be encumbered by legal holds. The lawyer hesitated. There's more. The Architectural Licensing Board has been notified of potential ethical violations. He's trying to destroy me completely, Victor realized. Effectively, yes. The lawyer studied him. What exactly did you do to this man? Victor had no answer that wouldn't further incriminate him. His phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. We need to meet. Now, the pieces were falling exactly as Damon had calculated. The game was entering its next phase, and his opponents were only beginning to understand the true depths of his strategy. Chapter 6: Sacrificial Pieces. The private room at the back of Carbone's restaurant offered both discretion and security, important considerations as Natalie and Victor met for the first time since their world began collapsing. This is a setup, Victor said immediately, his normally immaculate appearance showing signs of strain, unshaven, shirt wrinkled, eyes haunted. Sullivan has manufactured evidence against us. Not manufactured, Natalie corrected, her voice hollow. Orchestrated. There's a difference. What are you saying? I've reviewed the financial evidence with my attorney. Those transactions occurred from our devices. Victor, Damon didn't forge documents. He created situations where we actually performed the actions that now incriminate us. That's impossible, Victor insisted. I never authorized transfers from client accounts. Did you ever use my laptop? Enter passwords I gave you. Victor paled, remembering several occasions when Natalie had asked him to log into her foundation account to review architectural plans while she was on calls. He manipulated us, Natalie continued. Every suspicious transfer occurred when we were together, using our credentials, creating a perfect paper trail. Why didn't you see this coming? Victor demanded. You're his wife, and you're supposed to be brilliant, she snapped back. Neither of us recognized what he was capable of. Their conversation was interrupted as Theodore Blackwood, Victor's oldest friend and a partner at Boston's most prestigious law firm, joined them. It's worse than we thought, Theodore announced without preamble. Sullivan didn't just build a case against you both. He systematically neutralized your potential defenses. Judge Holloway has recused himself from all related cases due to a suddenly discovered conflict of interest. What conflict? Victor asked. Sullivan apparently provided significant financing for Holloway's son's business 2 years ago. The timing suggests he was establishing leverage even before he suspected your affair. That's insane, Natalie whispered. It would mean he's been planning this for years. Not planning, Theodore corrected. Preparing. There's a distinction. Sullivan has contingencies for everything. The DA investigating your case? His daughter received a full scholarship to Stanford from a foundation where Sullivan is the primary donor. Your family's banking relationships? Sullivan's firm acquired a controlling interest in Cambridge Trust 6 months ago. He can't have anticipated everything, Victor insisted. Theodore's expression remained grim. He didn't need to. He just needed to control enough variables to limit your options once he made his move. Natalie stared at her half-empty wine glass. What options do we have left? Limited ones, Theodore admitted. Legally, you're both exposed. The evidence trail is comprehensive. Fighting it means years of litigation with uncertain outcomes. My family has influence, Victor began. Your family is distancing themselves, Theodore interrupted. Your father has called a family council to discuss removing you from the Hargrove Trust. Victor looked physically ill. They can't do that. The trust includes a moral turpitude clause. They can and likely will. Natalie's phone buzzed with text. Her face went ashen as she read it. What now? Victor asked. My mother's house is being foreclosed on. Natalie's voice quivered. Apparently Damon holds the mortgage through a subsidiary. He's called in the loan. Theodore spread his hands. This is his strategy, attacking from multiple angles simultaneously, creating too many fires for you to extinguish. There must be a way to negotiate, Natalie insisted. Everyone has a price. Sullivan doesn't want money, Theodore pointed out. He wants consequences. The restaurant's owner appeared at their table, looking uncomfortable. Miss Sullivan, there are reporters outside asking about you and Mr. Hargrove. Someone tipped them off that you're here. Damon, Natalie whispered. I'll handle it, Theodore assured them, stepping outside. Left alone, Victor and Natalie faced the ruins of their plans. What had begun as attraction had evolved into ambition. Natalie seeking escape from a marriage that had become a business arrangement. Victor seeing opportunity in aligning with the Pierce family name while appropriating Sullivan's connections. We underestimated him, Victor finally admitted. No, Natalie countered, a chill in her voice. Underestimated him. You never knew what he was capable of. Theodore returned, his expression even more troubled. The Boston Globe is running a story tomorrow on financial improprieties at the Sullivan Foundation, naming you both as subjects of investigation. 3 other outlets have confirmed similar stories. How is this happening so fast? Victor demanded. Because Sullivan already had the evidence packaged and ready, Theodore explained. He was just waiting for the right moment to release it. Can you stop it? Natalie asked desperately. Not all of it. Not in time. Theodore hesitated. There's one other option, but you won't like it. What? Separation. If you both publicly disavow each other, claim the affair was a mistake and the financial issues a misunderstanding, there's a chance to mitigate some damage. You want us to turn on each other? Victor asked incredulously. I want you to recognize the reality, Theodore replied bluntly. Together, you're an easy target. Separately, each of you might salvage something. Natalie studied Victor thoughtfully. Theodore's right. United, we fall. Divided, we might survive. You can't be serious, Victor protested. Deadly serious, Natalie's voice hardened. Damon is systematically destroying everything we care about. Our only chance is to change the narrative. By abandoning each other, Victor concluded bitterly. By adapting, Natalie corrected. Isn't that what survivors do? As their debate continued, Damon sat in his office reviewing Theodore Blackwood's text updates. Theodore had been in Damon's employ for months, assigned to represent Victor's interests while actually reporting every detail to Damon. Meeting proceeding as expected. They're considering separation strategy. Damon smiled coldly. Even their attempts at counter-strategy were following his anticipated pathways. The carefully orchestrated media leaks, the foreclosure notice, the trust challenge, each applying pressure from different directions, forcing his targets into predictable responses. The reporters have surrounded Carbones, Trevor reported, entering the office. Natalie and Victor are effectively trapped inside, unless they want to face cameras. Excellent. And the DA? Moving forward with the investigation. The evidence is too compelling to ignore, even with political pressure. Damon nodded, satisfied. What about Plan B? In motion. If the criminal charges falter, the SEC investigation is ready. Victor's firm has multiple regulatory vulnerabilities we can exploit. Good. Damon stared thoughtfully at the chessboard on his desk, where a complex endgame was developing. They'll try to separate their fates now. Natalie will attempt to portray herself as a victim of Victor's manipulation. Will that work? Trevor asked. It doesn't matter. The pieces are already in motion. Damon moved a bishop, capturing a knight. Checkmate in 3 moves. As knight fell over Boston, the consequences continued to cascade. Victor emerged from Carbones to face a gauntlet of reporters shouting questions about financial fraud and professional misconduct. Natalie slipped out the back, only to find Evelyn waiting in a taxi, tears streaming down her aristocratic face. We're ruined, Evelyn whispered as Natalie entered the cab. Everything is gone. Not everything, Natalie replied, a hardness entering her voice. Not yet. She made a decision then, one born of desperation and survival instinct. If Damon wanted war, she would give him one, even if it meant sacrificing Victor and everything they planned together. The game had evolved, but Damon had anticipated this move as well. The battle was entering its final phase, with pieces being sacrificed across the board as the endgame approached. Chapter 7. Desperate Measures. The Hampshire house overlooked Boston Common, its elegant walls having witnessed generations of the city's power dynamics. In a private suite, Natalie sat across from Bradford Kensington, managing partner of Kensington, Marsh & Porter, the most aggressive divorce firm in Massachusetts. Damon has outmaneuvered us at every turn, Natalie admitted, her composure cracking. He's frozen my assets, destroyed my reputation, and is pushing for criminal charges. Kensington studied her file critically. Your position is precarious. The financial evidence is damning. Even if you avoid criminal prosecution, the civil liability could follow you for decades. I need options, Natalie insisted. There must be something we can use against him. Mr. Sullivan appears to have insulated himself remarkably well, Kensington observed. He's maintained a pristine paper trail while documenting your indiscretions meticulously. Everyone has secrets, Natalie countered. Damon built his fortune rapidly. There must be irregularities. Perhaps, but finding them would require resources you no longer have. Natalie's eyes hardened. What if I could provide information about Sullivan Investment Group's trading patterns? Data suggesting potential insider activities. Kensington's interest visibly sharpened. That would change the equation. But do you have such evidence? Not yet, Natalie admitted. But I know where to look. After leaving Kensington's office, Natalie made 2 calls. The first to her former assistant at the architectural firm, who still had access to the Sullivan Foundation servers. The second to an old college friend now working at the SEC. Meanwhile, Victor faced his own desperate scenario. The Hargrove Family Council had voted to suspend his access to trust distributions pending resolution of the allegations. His personal accounts were encumbered by legal holds. His professional reputation was in tatters. The licensing board has scheduled a hearing, his attorney informed him. They're considering emergency suspension of your architectural credentials. Based on what? Victor demanded. No charges have been filed. Based on the evidence presented by the Sullivan Foundation. The standards for professional ethics proceedings are lower than criminal court. Victor paced his rented apartment, a far cry from his Beacon Hill townhouse, which had been secured by Sullivan's attorneys as potential compensation for civil damages. What if I cooperate with authorities? Victor asked suddenly. Provide information about Natalie's role in exchange for leniency? The attorney looked troubled. You be confirming wrongdoing. Lesser wrongdoing, Victor clarified. I could position myself as manipulated by Natalie. She had access to the Foundation's finances. She initiated our relationship. Throwing Ms. Sullivan under the bus might help, but it doesn't explain your participation. What if I had evidence of other improprieties? Things involving Sullivan himself. Do you have such evidence? Victor hesitated. Not yet, but Natalie mentioned concerns about Sullivan Investment Group's trading practices. If we could show Damon has his own secrets. Across town, Damon reviewed security alerts indicating unauthorized access attempts on the Sullivan Investment Group's secure servers. Natalie's digital fingerprints? He asked Roland Chun, his head of cybersecurity. Not directly, Roland replied. The attempts came through Foundation systems using her old assistant's credentials. We tracked it to a coffee shop near Hampshire House. Damon smiled coldly. Desperation makes people predictable. Any real vulnerability? None. The honeypot servers activated as designed. They accessed only what we wanted them to see. Trevor entered with a report from their private investigator. Natalie met with Bradford Kensington this morning. Victor has approached the DA about a potential cooperation agreement. Right on schedule, Damon noted, checking his watch. They're looking for leverage, believing their only hope is finding something they can use against me. Will they find anything? Trevor asked. Only what I want them to find. Damon indicated the monitor showing access logs. They're currently downloading trading records that appear to show pattern irregularities. Records I created specifically for this scenario. You anticipated they'd look for insider trading evidence. I anticipated they'd seek any vulnerability to exploit. Financial impropriety is the obvious choice. Damon turned to Roland. How long until they discover the fabricated Jenkins merger documents? Based on their search patterns, within the hour. Damon nodded, satisfied. And the real SEC investigation? Proceeding is arranged, Trevor confirmed. The evidence you provided about Hargrove Architectural's foreign financial arrangements has their full attention. The carefully constructed web continued to tighten. While Natalie and Victor desperately sought leverage, Damon had already positioned their very attempts as additional evidence against them. Their unauthorized server access was being logged and documented, creating yet another layer of legal jeopardy. That evening, Victor received an encrypted message from Natalie. Found something. Trading irregularities in Sullivan Investment Group. Possible Jenkins merger insider information. Meeting my SEC contact tomorrow. Victor's hopes rose for the first time in weeks. He replied immediately. Need to meet tonight. My place. 8 p.m. What Victor didn't know was that his encrypted messaging app had been compromised weeks earlier. Damon read their exchange in real time, each desperate move confirming his psychological profile of his opponents. They've found the bait, he informed Samuel Westbrook. Schedule the SEC interview for tomorrow afternoon. I want agents waiting when Natalie arrives with her evidence. Entrapment, Samuel questioned. Justice, Damon corrected. They're attempting to fabricate evidence against me using illegally accessed confidential documents. The SEC will be very interested in that fact. As night fell, Natalie arrived at Victor's apartment, clutching a flash drive containing what she believed was damning evidence against Damon. These trading patterns showed Sullivan Investment Group positioned heavily before the Jenkins announcement, she explained, showing Victor the documents. The timing is too perfect to be coincidence. Will it be enough? Victor asked. Combined with testimony about Damon's controlling behavior and emotional manipulation, it creates reasonable doubt about the Foundation allegations. Natalie's eyes gleamed with renewed hope. We can argue he fabricated evidence against us as revenge. My attorney thinks I should distance myself from you, Victor admitted. Natalie's expression hardened. That would be a mistake. United, we have a chance. Divided, he'll destroy us individually. Neither realized that their conversation was being recorded, their desperate strategizing becoming additional evidence of conspiracy. The trap Damon had set months earlier was closing, with his targets maneuvering precisely as he had anticipated. The next morning, Damon met with the district attorney, providing final documentation of the foundation financial improprieties. The case is solid, the DA confirmed. Grand jury indictments should come through by week's end. And the SEC matter? Damon inquired. Coordinated as requested. If they present the fabricated trading records, they'll face additional federal charges for market manipulation attempts. Damon nodded, satisfied. They'll be meeting their supposed SEC contact at 2 o'clock. Agents will be waiting, the DA confirmed. This is quite the web you've woven, Damon. Justice requires thoroughness, Damon replied without emotion. They plan to destroy everything I've built. I'm simply ensuring appropriate consequences. As Damon left the DA's office, he received confirmation that the final piece had fallen into place. The Sullivan Foundation Board had voted unanimously to pursue maximum criminal and civil remedies against Natalie and Victor. The end game was approaching. All pieces were positioned exactly as Damon had calculated months earlier when he first discovered Natalie's betrayal. What had begun as a marriage was ending as a masterclass in strategic retribution. Chapter 8: The Sacrifice. The federal building's interview room felt unnaturally cold as Natalie and Victor sat across from two stone-faced SEC investigators. What they had expected to be a confidential meeting to present evidence against Damon had instantly transformed into their own interrogation. These documents you've provided, Agent Larson began, holding up the flash drive. Where did you obtain them? From Sullivan Investment Group servers, Natalie replied cautiously. I had legitimate access as Damon's wife. Our information indicates otherwise, Agent Pearson countered. Server logs show unauthorized access using compromised credentials. That's a federal offense under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Victor and Natalie exchanged alarm glances. Furthermore, Larson continued, preliminary analysis indicates these trading records have been altered. Attempting to fabricate evidence of securities fraud is itself a serious crime. That's absurd, Victor protested. We found these records exactly as they are. In a secured server area you accessed illegally, Pearson noted, while already under investigation for financial crimes. The door opened, and Damon entered with a man Natalie recognized as the SEC's regional director. Mr. Sullivan has been cooperating with our office on several matters, the director explained, including monitoring unauthorized access attempts to his company's servers. This was a setup, Natalie realized, her voice hollow. This was consequence, Damon corrected calmly. You attempted to fabricate evidence against me to escape your own legal jeopardy. That decision has now compounded your problems significantly. Victor stood abruptly. You manipulated everything from the beginning. I protected myself, Damon replied without emotion. There's a distinction. The SEC director cleared his throat. Ms. Sullivan, Mr. Hargrove, based on the evidence before us, we're preparing charges related to attempted securities fraud, unauthorized computer access, and conspiracy. As the reality of their situation became clear, Natalie made a desperate calculation. I want to cooperate, she announced suddenly. Victor masterminded everything. The affair, the foundation theft, this evidence tampering. I was coerced. Victor stared at her in disbelief. You betray me now? I'm saving myself, Natalie replied coldly. Someone has to survive this. The perfect unity they had presented crumbled instantly under pressure, exactly as Damon had predicted. He watched dispassionately as they turned on each other, accusations flying, each attempting to minimize their own culpability by maximizing the others. After 30 minutes of this spectacle, Damon quietly excused himself. In the hallway, Samuel Westbrook awaited with an update. The grand jury has returned indictments on the foundation charges, Samuel reported. Arrest warrants are being processed. And the Hargrove firm? The board has voted to remove Victor permanently and change the company name. 3 generations of Hargrove legacy erased in a week. Damon nodded, satisfied. What about Evelyn? Foreclosure proceedings are advancing. She'll be removed from the Beacon Hill property within 10 days. The systematic dismantling of his opponents' lives was proceeding exactly as designed. While Natalie and Victor fought over the scraps of their remaining credibility, Damon had already moved to the next phase of his strategy. Later that evening, as Damon reviewed final documentation in his study, Trevor arrived with unexpected news. Natalie's agreed to testify against Victor in exchange for reduced charges, he reported. She's claiming he manipulated her from the beginning, using their relationship to access foundation finances. And Victor, offering similar cooperation against Natalie. The DA is playing them against each other. Damon smiled thinly. Their loyalty dissolved exactly when predicted. Trevor studied his brother. This vendetta, it's more thorough than I expected. It's not vendetta, Damon corrected. It's justice. They conspired to take everything from me, my company, my foundation, my reputation. Actions have consequences. The foundation will recover. Already has. The board has approved restructuring that removes any trace of Natalie's involvement. The community center project breaks ground next month as scheduled. Trevor hesitated. There's one more thing. Victor attempted suicide in federal custody. For the first time, Damon's composed expression faltered slightly. Is he dead? No. Guards intervened in time. He's under psychiatric hold. Damon was silent for a moment, then arrange appropriate medical care. Anonymous donor. You're helping him? Trevor asked, surprised. I'm ensuring he survives to face justice, Damon clarified. Death would be escape. The next morning, Damon received notification that Natalie had accepted a plea agreement. 5 years imprisonment for financial fraud, with testimony against Victor as part of the deal. In exchange, the SEC charges would be handled as part of the same case, rather than as separate federal counts. Victor, meanwhile, had been released to a psychiatric facility, his legal team now arguing diminished capacity, a strategy Damon had anticipated months earlier. The chess game was entering its final moves. All major pieces had been captured or neutralized. What remained was ensuring the endgame proceeded exactly as Damon had designed. That afternoon, he visited the construction site of the Sullivan Foundation's Community Center in South Boston, a project that would provide educational resources and opportunities for underprivileged children. As he surveyed the foundation being laid, Samuel joined him with final legal updates. Natalie's formal sentencing is scheduled for next week, Samuel reported. Victor's competency hearing is the following day. And the civil matters? Proceeding as planned. The courts have approved asset freezes on all their accounts. Evelyn's eviction is scheduled for Monday. Damon nodded, his gaze fixed on the construction. Ensure the media coverage is appropriate. I want the foundation's mission highlighted, not the scandal. Of course, the narrative is already shifting. You, as the victim who maintained focus on charitable work despite personal betrayal. As they walked the perimeter of what would become classrooms and computer labs, Damon reflected on the precision of his response. What Natalie and Victor had failed to understand was that his calculating nature wasn't just a business strategy. It was his fundamental approach to life. Was it worth it? Samuel asked suddenly. The marriage, knowing how it ended? Damon considered the question seriously. Every experience provides value if properly analyzed. I learned important lessons about trust, verification, and consequence. But the personal cost was anticipated and accepted, Damon finished. Nothing of value comes without risk. The mistake is failing to prepare for potential losses. As sunset painted the Boston skyline in amber hues, Damon returned to his office for a final review of the settlement documents. Everything was proceeding according to design. The pieces he had positioned months earlier were delivering exactly the outcome he had calculated. Justice, in Damon Sullivan's world, was not an abstract concept, but a precise mathematical equation, one he had solved with devastating accuracy. Chapter 9. Checkmate. 1 year later, Damon stood at the podium of the newly completed Sullivan Community Center, addressing Boston's elite gathered for the grand opening. The building, a stunning architectural achievement with sweeping glass walls and innovative sustainable design, represented the foundation's largest investment to date. Today marks not just the opening of a building, Damon told the assembled crowd, but the beginning of opportunity for thousands of children who might otherwise be overlooked by society. Every child deserves the chance to rise beyond their circumstances. In the audience, Trevor watched proudly as his brother spoke with genuine passion about creating pathways out of poverty. The center would provide academic support, technology access, mentorship, and scholarships, a comprehensive approach to breaking cycles of disadvantage. What went unmentioned was the dramatic fallout that had occurred since the anniversary dinner that had sparked such devastation. The story had dominated Boston's social circles for months before gradually fading from public consciousness. Natalie was serving her sentence at the Federal Women's Facility in Danbury, Connecticut. Her testimony had indeed helped secure Victor's conviction, though not with the results she had hoped. Rather than receiving leniency, the judge had been particularly harsh, citing her betrayal of philanthropic principles and breach of fiduciary duty. Victor had been declared competent to stand trial despite his attorney's efforts. Found guilty on multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy, he was currently serving 7 years at a medium-security federal prison. The Hargrove family had legally changed their architectural firm's name, erasing Victor's connection to the generations-old business. His father had died 3 months after the conviction, with many suggesting the disgrace had accelerated his decline. Evelyn Pierce had been forced to leave Boston entirely, her social standing destroyed by the scandal and her financial security obliterated by Damon's systematic dismantling of the supports he had quietly provided for years. She now lived in a modest apartment in Providence, Rhode Island, largely ostracized by the social circles that had once embraced her. The foundation itself had emerged stronger after a brief period of scrutiny. Damon's transparent cooperation with authorities and immediate implementation of enhanced financial controls had restored confidence. Major donors had increased their contributions, impressed by his resilience and unwavering commitment to the mission despite personal betrayal. After the ceremony, as guests toured the new facility, Bradford Kensington, who had briefly represented Natalie before withdrawing, approached Damon. "Remarkable recovery," Kensington commented, gesturing around the impressive space. Few expected the foundation to survive the scandal so robustly. "People underestimate the power of systematic planning," Damon replied evenly. "Indeed." Kensington studied him curiously. "I've represented many high-net-worth individuals in contentious divorces, but never encountered anyone who executed such comprehensive consequences." "Justice requires precision," Damon said simply. "Justice or revenge?" Kensington challenged. "Is there a meaningful distinction when the outcome is proportional to the offense?" Before Kensington could respond, they were interrupted by Charlotte Westlake, the foundation's new executive director, a brilliant administrator with impeccable credentials whom Damon had recruited from Harvard's education department. "The mayor would like a private word," Charlotte informed Damon, who excused himself from Kensington with a cordial nod. Later that evening, Damon sat alone in his study at the Lakewood estate, reviewing the day's events while classical music played softly in the background. The house felt different now, cleansed of deception, though emptier. He had considered selling it, but ultimately decided against erasing his own history. Lessons required remembrance. Trevor entered with coffee and updates on their latest investment ventures. The Sullivan Investment Group had thrived in the past year, its reputation for ethical practice enhanced by Damon's handling of the foundation crisis. "I saw Kensington speaking with you," Trevor noted. "Still trying to understand how you orchestrated everything?" "People find it difficult to grasp comprehensive strategic thinking," Damon replied. "They look for simple motivations: greed, passion, revenge. They rarely recognize the mathematical elegance of properly executed consequence." "Have you heard from Natalie?" Her attorney contacted Samuel about potential appeal strategies. "Nothing viable." Trevor hesitated. And you're certain about never considering reconciliation? People make mistakes. Damon's expression hardened. Betrayal isn't a mistake. It's a choice, a series of calculated decisions made with full awareness of potential harm. Forgiveness might be spiritually admirable, but it's strategically unsound. Some might call that harsh. Some haven't built themselves from nothing, learning exactly how fragile trust is and how devastating its breach can be. Damon sipped his coffee. I don't expect universal understanding of my principles. I expect respect for their consistency. As Trevor left, Damon moved to the window overlooking the lake that gave the estate its name. The water was calm tonight, reflecting moonlight in perfect symmetry. He found the parallel appropriate, his external composure mirroring the absolute stillness of his resolved conviction. The anniversary dinner confrontation had been merely the visible manifestation of a strategy already months in execution. While Natalie and Victor had been planning their betrayal, Damon had been constructing their downfall with the same methodical precision that had built his fortune. His phone buzzed with a notification, a news alert about Victor Hargrove being denied his first parole hearing. Another piece moving exactly as calculated. Some would call his response excessive, but those people hadn't built themselves from nothing, learning painful lessons about loyalty and betrayal along the way. Damon had simply applied the principles that governed his professional success to a personal violation: thorough analysis, strategic planning, and decisive execution. The chess metaphor was apt, but incomplete. In chess, the goal was to capture the king. In Damon's calculation, the goal was to ensure that those who attempted to destroy him would face the full mathematical consequence of their actions. Not just defeat, but comprehensive justice. As he closed the portfolio containing the day's events, Damon reflected on the truth few understood. In a game of consequence, the most dangerous opponent wasn't the one who shouted threats or made dramatic gestures. It was the one who quietly calculated every move, anticipated every counter, and executed with precision while opponents still believed the game had barely begun. Checkmate wasn't just the end. It was inevitable from the first move, if you knew how to calculate the board correctly. Damon Sullivan did, and that made all the difference. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.